Hi YouTube, this is Frugal Millennial, and on this episode of Finance Fridays, I'm going to go through the checklist of things to do when you purchase a property in Australia. First things first, I need to read out the disclaimer that I'm not a financial advisor, so I highly recommend you talk to someone who is to give you further guidance. I've listed a chronological list of things that you should go through when you purchase a property in Australia. Now this may differ between states, but the general borrowing rules are the same if you're looking to borrow to buy your property. First, a big shout out to my brother Jack and my friends Michal, Terry and Maria and her husband Reese, who just bought a property recently. And a shout out to my friends Alyssa, Eleanor, Wenting and Elvin, who's thinking about buying right now. Right now it's kind of a good time to buy because we have record low interest rates. So when you're at this stage, you should ideally have at least 20% of deposit to avoid lender's mortgage insurance or LMI. If you don't have this amount, that's okay too. You just have to pay the lender's mortgage insurance, which can be calculated at www.yourmortgage.com.au. On top of the savings, you should also consider conveyancing or solicitor fees, disbursement or inquiry fees for title searches, building and pest inspection fee, fees for identification survey, some instances, strata record inspection, stamp duty on title transfer, adjustment of council rate if a seller hasn't paid their council rate, insurance, etc. There's a myriad of different extra costs involved. In order to cover this, an extra 5% on top of your 20% should suffice. For first home owners, you can apply for grants, which I won't go through in detail today, but you can save a lot of money, and this can be found on www.firsthome.gov.au. Pre-approval. You get a pre-approval if you are borrowing money from a bank, and you can do it either through a broker or an online comparison website. Pre-approval is a non-binding certificate that shows you how much you can potentially borrow, but doesn't guarantee that you will get approved once you have found a property. The approval will last between 3 to 6 months, and this might differ between banks. Now, a broker is someone who is a between person that talks to the bank on your behalf and seeks out a lender for you. He or she gets commission in return if you choose to go with their recommendation. They can be good if you are time poor. I also think broker is someone you should approach for your first home purchase because they will guide you through the daunting process of actually purchasing a property. However, they don't necessarily find the best rate for you because they might not have a deal with all of the banks. Another channel to find banks that will lend you money is to go on to comparison websites such as CanStar, Rate City or Compare the Market. Because I'm super frugal, my recent purchase was through this method and I found one of the best interest rates around. Next is paperwork. This is almost unavoidable even with a broker. You need to provide them with your financial details so they can assess how much you can borrow. If your borrowing power is lower than what you expect, this might mean you have a low credit score, which might be affected by your previous credit history, such as missing out on a credit card payment, or you have multiple negatively geared properties. Once you have a pre-approval, you need to find a property. Make sure to stick within your budget. When you like a property, ask for the contract. The contract goes by different names in different state or territory. In Victoria, it's called Section 32. In New South Wales, it's called Schedule 1 Prescribed Documents. In South Australia, it's called Form 1 Disclosure Statement. In ACT, it's known as Required Documentation for Sales of Residential Property or Land. In Queensland, Northern Territory and Tasmania, there's actually no legal requirement for a vendor statement. Due diligence check. Ask a conveyancer or a solicitor to go through your contract. Things you should consider including, does this house have a owner's cooperation, which means you need to pay a certain fee, and sometimes there's a ban on pet ownership. In growth areas, sometimes you need to pay growth area infrastructure contribution. So you need to make sure that this is clear in your contract. Does this property sit within a flood or bushfire area? I nearly bought a house overlooking this really nice green bushland, but realised it was prone to bushfire. This means had I bought the house, I would have needed to pay a higher premium. Also, research your area that property is in. Consider things like the surroundings. My first property was located next to a halfway house, which I only discovered later on when I moved in. So there was a lot of noise coming from the building late at night. If you're going to move to the country, consider things like fun noise, smells, etc. When you get the contract, you need to consider things such as, does the property adjoin Crown land? Does it have water frontage, easements, contain disused government road, or have any Crown license associated with it? If you want to build a dwelling, whether an extra at the back or a new dwelling, your house cannot run through any of these things that I have just mentioned. Have a close look at the property boundaries, because it's important that the measurements matches what you're going to buy. If you can, make sure to get a building and pest inspection done before you sign the contract. The pest and building inspection will let you know if you have termites, borrowers, wood rots, moisture-related issues, fungal decays, structural issues, electric wiring, etc. Building and pest inspection is essential before an auction because you can't do it after you have purchased, as most auctions are unconditional. This is not really necessary if it's a relatively new house. Some private sales are going so fast that you can't do a building inspection before you sign the contract. So you need to stipulate in your contract that it's pending building and pest inspection. By activating the clause, you can withdraw from the contract if it's unsatisfactory when the building inspection comes back. Make sure the extensions, renovations and other building works that need a building permit is covered by a building permit. There's nothing worse than buying a property and getting hit with a fine from the council or having to take down the structure. And just use common sense. I had a friend who bought an apartment that had cracks in the foundation and hence it was cheap. The building inspector came through only after and had a look and deemed it unlivable. My friend had to resell it a year later. Although she broke even, the time and headache that she went through was just not worth it. If all looks good, make sure you bid on it or make an offer. There's always a trick to making an offer at private sales. If you had a good chat to the real estate agent when you were at the inspection, you have got a sense of what the seller wants. And this is always about asking the right question. Questions include, what is the selling price? Now this is the obvious one. This would determine whether you actually have funds for buying the property. How's the competition? This will determine whether you have a chance of buying the property. Anyone else interested so far? If so, what is the offer? Most real estate agents won't tell you this because for legal reasons, but they could give you a ballpark. This again will determine whether you have the funds and the chance. Are they in a hurry to sell? Based off this question, if the seller wants to get the money as soon as they can, you might be able to offer a quick settlement date as the bargaining chip to get a better chance of securing the property. With an auction, I will always suggest to make an offer before the auction date because sometimes the seller is very eager to sell and doesn't want to wait until the auction. Something to note, at auction everything is unconditional, so you can't get a building inspection or put a financial clause in the contract. So make sure to get the building inspection done prior and make sure your finance is solid. For a private sale, you need to stipulate that you want to buy pending building and pest inspection. And if you're borrowing money from the bank, then you need to stipulate it's also pending finance. Within the 14 days of signing, you need to get a building inspector to have a look at the property and write a report. If the recommendation is deemed unfit for living, then you shouldn't buy the property, as banks will probably not loan you the money. On signing, you have a choice of 30, 45, 60 or 90 days settlement. If there's no hurry, I always go for 60 or 90 days because I just want to save more during that time and make sure all the paperwork is sorted. I don't recommend buying just before Christmas holiday. if you are getting a loan, as this ruins a settlement date because bank is closed for many days during that period and they might not get the approval through in time. Having said that, you can find bargains because during this time there's less competition as there's less people around. Next, notify the lender. Make sure you do this on the same date of purchase because the bank needs the paperwork done ASAP. If you have a settlement of 30 days, this is especially important. Don't be afraid to chase up on the paperwork if you haven't heard from the bank, but your conveyancers should be on top of this. Next, contact your conveyancer. Once you have signed everything, message the conveyancer. They will act as a legal mediator between you and your seller, and they will do all the mountain of paperwork associated with purchasing a property for you. Paying a deposit. Once your private treaty offer is accepted and you have accepted the sale contract, it's time to pay the 10% deposit. Building and pest inspection. Make sure to organise this as soon as possible. It needs to be done usually within 14 days after you sign the contract. Again, I'm highlighting the importance of this. It's around about $500 to get it done. I always do this, especially if I haven't seen the property. I bought a property in Tasmania without seeing it. I made sure I had a pest and building inspection because these people are professionals that will highlight any existing problems that the house might have or I have missed. They look at the house objectively. You can verify your identity either through Zip ID, which is something one of my newer conveyancers prefer. They come to your house and you sign a document to prove that you are who you say you are. This is around about $59. There's also AusPo's VOI, which I have used a few years ago, and this is slightly cheaper at about $44. Insurance. You need building and home and content insurance if you're living there. This is dependent on whether you have a common area, then you are likely to have a body corporate. Building insurance is covered in the body corporate, so you don't need to double up on insurance. I nearly did this the first time I purchased a place, but if it's a standalone home such as a house, make sure to organise the insurance in advance. Depending on whether you're renting out the property, you should try and get landlord insurance. This will help you cover the costs for the times you don't have a tenant living there. If you're purchasing as a rental investment, make sure to organise a real estate agent to the property before settlement to evaluate the rent. And ideally, you want the ads for the property to be showing straight after settlement, assuming nothing goes wrong. Final inspection. You need to organise a final inspection a week or few days before settlement just to confirm that the house is clean. I've heard horror stories where the tenant left all the junk in the backyard. If you do find this, you can tell the real estate agent. The seller would then need to compensate you for the removal of the rubbish in the yard. Check that the place is as it was advertised and that there isn't a sudden hole in the wall. Settlement day is a day when you or your representative meets up with the vendor to swap your check with the title of ownership. Government departments need to be notified of the change in the ownership, and this is generally done by your solicitor or conveyancer. Make sure to also have the phone on in case there's an issue, which has happened to me previously. You can pretty much pick up the keys once the property has settled. At a real estate agent, you normally get a care package. This will include champagne, chocolate, flowers, or just a gift card. I hope this helps you on your journey of purchasing a property in Australia. If you have any questions, please comment below and I'll try my best to answer them. As always, I put a lot of research into these videos, so I really appreciate it if you like and subscribe to my channel. You can find me on socials in the links below. Thanks for watching.